The chapel smelled like lilies and old wood. Afternoon sun came through the stained glass and threw colored light across my father's face in the casket. I was standing 3 feet from him reading the eulogy I'd spent 2 sleepless nights writing when I heard it. A laugh, soft but unmistakable. I looked up from the paper. There in the back row of the chapel, my husband had his head tilted toward a woman I had never seen before. She was whispering something in his ear, and he was smiling. Not the polite smile you wear at a funeral. The other kind. The kind that has nothing to do with grief and everything to do with want. My voice cracked. The words on the page blurred because my hands were trembling so hard I couldn't hold the paper still. But I kept reading. My daddy deserved that much, even if my husband couldn't be bothered to pretend he cared. But what happened 3 days later when the lawyer opened my father's envelope in a room full of people who thought they knew my husband that moment changed everything, especially for the man who thought he had already won. This story still shakes me every time I tell it. So before I go back to the beginning, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. Subscribe if you haven't already. Trust me, you are going to want to hear every second of this. Let me take you back to where it all started. I need to take you back 14 years to the woman I was before Raymond Carter walked into my life and rearranged everything I thought I knew about love. My name is Denise Elaine Carter. Well, it was Denise Elaine Holloway back then. I was 24, fresh out of Georgia State with an accounting degree, working 60-hour weeks at a mid-size auditing firm in downtown Atlanta, trying to prove I belonged. I loved numbers. Always had. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't pretend. You put them on a ledger and they tell you exactly where you stand. I wish people were that honest. My daddy, Clarence Holloway, raised me by himself after my mama passed from a brain aneurysm when I was 12. One morning, she was braiding my hair for school, and by that afternoon, she was gone. Just like that. No warning, no goodbye. Daddy never remarried.
Baby girl, your mama took the best part of my heart with her. What's left belongs to you.
He ran a small chain of laundromats on the south side of Atlanta. 3 locations. Nothing fancy. The kind of places with flickering fluorescent lights and old magazines and plastic chairs. He drove a 2003 Ford pickup that rattled every time he hit a pothole, and he wore the same rotation of 5 flannel shirts until the elbows wore thin. People looked at Clarence Holloway and saw a simple man, a quiet man, a man who smelled like detergent and hard work. But Daddy had a saying he repeated so often it became the background music of my childhood.
Real wealth is quiet, baby girl. The loudest person in the room usually has the least.
I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. Not for a long time. I met Raymond at a charity gala in Buckhead in the spring of 2011. The event was for an education nonprofit, and my firm had donated a table. I almost didn't go. I'd been working late all week on a client's tax audit, and my eyes were burning from staring at spreadsheets. But my coworker convinced me. "Girl, put on a dress and come eat free shrimp," she said. So I went. Raymond was standing near the bar in a charcoal gray suit that fit like it was sewn onto his body. He had a smile that could warm a room from the doorway. When he saw me, he walked over like he'd been waiting for me specifically, like I was the only woman in a room full of 200 people.
"I don't think we've met,"
he said, extending his hand.
"Raymond Carter, real estate?"
Looking back now, the signs were right there in that first sentence. He didn't say "nice to meet you." He didn't ask my name first. He introduced himself and his profession in the same breath, like they were the same thing. But I didn't see it then. I saw the smile. I saw the confidence. I felt the warmth of his hand around mine, and something inside me softened. We dated for 2 years. He was everything I thought I wanted. Attentive. Charming. He remembered small details, my favorite tea, the exact shade of yellow that made me happy the way I like my eggs on Sunday mornings. He opened car doors. He called when he said he would. He showed up. If only I had paid attention to the other things he showed up for. Every time he came to Daddy's house for Sunday dinner, Raymond asked questions. Not about Daddy's health. Not about his stories or his life. About the laundromats. How many locations? How long had he owned them? Did he own the buildings or lease them? What were the property values in those neighborhoods? Daddy would answer politely, but I noticed something. After Raymond left, Daddy would get quiet. He'd sit on the porch with his coffee and stare at the street like he was turning something over in his mind. Once I asked him what was wrong. He looked at me for a long time.
Baby girl, promise me something. Whatever happens, protect yourself first. Not the marriage, yourself.
I laughed. Daddy, we're not even engaged yet. He didn't laugh back.
Just promise me.
I promised. I thought he was just being an overprotective father. I thought he was worrying about nothing. I was wrong. Daddy wasn't worrying. He was watching, and he saw what I refused to see. We got married in June of 2013 at a small church in College Park. Daddy walked me down the aisle in his best suit, the one he only wore for funerals and weddings. He held my arm tighter than usual, and right before he let go at the altar, he whispered,
Remember your promise.
I nodded and smiled, already crying happy tears. I didn't know those would be the last happy tears I'd cry for a very long time. My best friend Tamara Jenkins stood next to me as maid of honor. Tamara and I had been close since freshman year at Georgia State. She was a social worker, blunt protective, the kind of friend who'd tell you your man was trash while still holding your hand through the heartbreak. She never trusted Raymond. Not from day one.
Something about that man is too smooth, Denise.
She told me the week before the wedding.
Nobody's that perfect. That much charm, it's a costume.
You're just being paranoid, I told her.
And you're being blind,
she said.
But I love you, so I'll shut up. For now.
Then there was Mama Lucille, Raymond's mother. The first time I met her, she hugged me and said,
Welcome to the family, sweetheart.
But her eyes told a different story. While her arms were around me, her gaze swept over my shoes, my handbag, my earrings, taking silent inventory. She hugged me, but her eyes were shopping. At the wedding reception, Mama Lucille cornered Daddy near the dessert table. I was across the room, but I watched her lean in close and ask him something. Daddy's jaw tightened. He gave a short answer and walked away. I asked him later what she said.
She wanted to know how much the laundromats bring in per year.
He shook his head.
At my daughter's wedding reception.
I made an excuse for her. She's just making conversation, Daddy. He looked at me with those tired, knowing eyes.
Well, baby girl, nobody asks about revenue at a wedding unless they're calculating something.
The first few years were good. Or at least I told myself they were good. Raymond sold houses. I climbed the ladder at my firm-made senior accountant by 30. We had Zora, our baby girl, and for a while life felt full. Sunday mornings making pancakes. Zora's laughter filling every room. Church on Sundays. Date nights on Fridays. But even in those good years, small things nagged at me. Raymond would take calls in the garage and hang up the second I came near. He'd come home smelling like a cologne I never bought him. And every few months, he'd find a way to bring the conversation back to Daddy's business, Daddy's properties, Daddy's money. One night, about 5 years into our marriage, I woke up at 2:15 in the morning and the bed was empty. I found Raymond standing in the backyard, phone pressed to his ear, laughing softly. Not his business laugh. Not his polite laugh. A different laugh. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard him give me in years. The kind that comes from somewhere warm and private. When he saw me at the back door, he ended the call so fast his finger slipped and he nearly dropped the phone.
Just a client, babe,
he said.
West Coast, time difference.
I nodded. I went back to bed. I told myself it was nothing. But something had shifted. I felt it in my chest, a hairline crack I couldn't name. Like the first fracture in a windshield before the whole thing spiders out. If only I had listened to that crack. Instead, I rolled over, pulled the blanket up, and convinced myself that everything was fine. Everything was not fine. For a while, I held on to the good moments like they were proof that my marriage was worth saving. And honestly, some of those moments were beautiful. Real beautiful. Sunday mornings were ours. I'd wake up early, put on Anita Baker low on the kitchen speaker, and start the pancake batter while the coffee brewed. Zora would come padding down the hallway in her little fuzzy socks, still half asleep, and climb into her chair at the kitchen table. Raymond would come down last, kiss me on the forehead, pour himself a cup, and sit across from Zora, making silly faces until she laughed so hard milk came out of her nose. Those mornings felt sacred. Like nothing outside that kitchen could touch us. After breakfast, we'd drive to Greater Hope Baptist for the 11 o'clock service. Zora between us in the pew, swinging her little legs because her feet couldn't reach the floor. Raymond would hold my hand during prayer, his palm warm, his fingers laced through mine. And I'd think, this is it. This is what I waited for. But looking back now, I realize I was holding on to a version of Raymond that was already disappearing. The man who made pancake faces with Zora on Sunday morning was the same man who locked his phone every time he set it down. The man who held my hand in church was the same man who flinched when I touched him at home. The first real crack came when Daddy got sick. It was a Wednesday afternoon in late September. I was at my desk reviewing a corporate tax return when my phone buzzed. Daddy's voice sounded thin, like someone had turned down his volume.
Baby girl, I need you to come over, the doctor called.
Stage 3 lung cancer. The oncologist at Grady Memorial said the tumor was in his left lung, already pressing against the bronchial wall. They wanted to start chemotherapy immediately, but the prognosis was uncertain. Daddy sat in his recliner, still in his flannel shirt, still smelling like detergent, and listened to everything the doctor said on the phone with a calm that terrified me. When he hung up, he looked at me and said,
Well, I guess the Lord's got a timeline I didn't plan for.
I fell apart. Right there on his living room floor, I cried so hard my ribs hurt. Daddy got out of his recliner, knelt down beside me, and held me. This man who'd just been told his body was turning against him, and he was comforting me.
I'm not done yet, baby girl,
He whispered.
Don't you bury me before I'm gone.
Raymond's reaction was the first sign I should have taken seriously. When I called him from Daddy's house, crying, barely able to form words, he was quiet for a few seconds.
That's tough, babe. But your dad's strong. He'll be fine.
A pause.
What time are you coming home? I need you to sign some paperwork for the new listing.
Paperwork. My father had just been diagnosed with cancer, and my husband wanted me to come home and sign paperwork. I started spending more time at Daddy's house, driving him to chemo appointments at Grady every other Tuesday, sitting with him in that cold room with the vinyl chairs and the IV drip while he dozed off, bringing him ginger tea when the nausea hit, reading to him from his favorite book of Psalms when the pain got bad at night. Raymond didn't come with me. Not once. At first he made excuses.
I got showings all day, babe. The market's hot right now. I can't take time off.
But after a few weeks, he stopped making excuses altogether. He just didn't ask. Didn't ask how Daddy was doing. Didn't ask how I was holding up. The only time he mentioned my father was to complain that I wasn't home enough.
You're over there every single day, Denise. Your father's a grown man. He doesn't need you babysitting him.
I stared at him. He has cancer, Raymond.
And he has doctors for that. What about your family here? What about me?
That word me. It hung in the air like smoke. Not what about Zora. Not what about us. What about me? But I swallowed it. I swallowed everything back then. Mama Lucille made things worse the way she always did when she smelled weakness. She started calling Raymond every evening around 7, right when I was trying to get Zora to bed. I could hear her voice through the phone, sharp and sweet at the same time, like vinegar poured into honey.
That girl spends more time with her sick daddy than with her own husband. A wife's place is beside her man, not running back to her father's house every night like she's still a child.
Raymond never defended me. Not once. He'd just listen, sometimes laugh and say,
I know, Mama, I know.
One afternoon, Mama Lucille came to our house while I was at work. She said she was there to help with Zora. When I got home, Zora was sitting on the couch next to her grandmother, looking small and confused. Mama Lucille had her arm around my daughter and was speaking softly.
Your mama's going through a lot right now, baby. Good thing your daddy's here to hold everything together. Your daddy's the strong one in this family. You remember that.
My stomach dropped to the floor. I stood in the doorway, gripping my keys so tight the metal cut into my palm. She was planting seeds in my 9-year-old daughter's head, telling my child that her father was the strong one, that I was the one falling apart, that I was the weak link. I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked in, calmly picked up Zora and said, "Thank you for watching her Mama Lucille. I've got it from here."
Of course, sweetheart. That's what family is for.
After she left, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from the slow, sickening realization that the people in my own house were not on my side. But I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself Mama Lucille was just an overbearing grandmother. I told myself Raymond was just stressed about work. I told myself the marriage was going through a rough patch and rough patches end. Then I found the receipt. It was a Thursday night. Raymond had thrown his jacket over the back of the dining room chair the way he always did. I picked it up to hang it in the closet, and a small piece of paper fell out of the inside pocket. A receipt from Bacchanalia, one of the most expensive restaurants in Buckhead. Dinner for two. 2 glasses of Barolo. 2 entrees. 1 chocolate soufflé. Total $312. I had never been to Bacchanalia with my husband. Not once in 12 years. My chest tightened like someone had wrapped a belt around my ribs and pulled. I held that receipt under the kitchen light, reading the date over and over. Last Saturday. The Saturday Raymond told me he had a showing in Marietta that ran late. I put the receipt back in his jacket. I hung the jacket in the closet. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to Raymond breathe beside me. Each breath sounded different now. Each exhale felt like a small lie leaving his body. And somewhere deep in my gut, in that place where women keep the truths they're not ready to face, I already knew. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud. Not yet. But the worst was coming. And it was closer than I thought. Daddy died on a Tuesday morning in early March. 6:14 in the morning. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath. The room at Grady Memorial smelled like antiseptic and the lavender oil I'd been rubbing on his wrists because he said it helped him sleep. The heart monitor went flat, and the sound it made, that long, thin, endless beep. I still hear it sometimes when the house gets too quiet at night. The nurse came in and turned off the machine. She touched my shoulder and said, "Take all the time you need, sweetheart." Then she left and closed the door behind her. I sat there for 47 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the wall above his bed. I held his hand and I talked to him. I told him about Zora's spelling bee. I told him I loved him. I told him I was sorry I couldn't save him. Then I called Raymond.
Hey, babe, what's up?
I could hear traffic in the background. My daddy's gone, Raymond. Silence. 3 seconds. 4. 5.
Oh, wow. Okay. Are you still at the hospital?
Yes.
All right. Well, do you need me to come? Because I've got a closing at 10, but I can try to push it.
My father was dead. His body was still warm in my hands, and my husband was calculating whether he could fit his wife's grief between a closing. "Don't bother," I said. "I'll handle it."
You sure? Okay. Love you, babe. I'm sorry.
He hung up. I looked at my daddy's face, peaceful, still, and I whispered, "You were right, Daddy, about everything." The funeral was held that Saturday at Greater Hope Baptist, the same church where Zora swung her little legs in the pew, the same church where Raymond used to hold my hand during prayer. 300 people came, Daddy's employees from the laundromats, neighbors, church members, people I hadn't seen in years who told me stories about how Clarence Holloway once helped them fix a washing machine at midnight or lent them money for rent and never asked for it back. Raymond wore a black suit. He looked good. He always looked good. That was part of the problem. During the viewing, while people lined up to pay their respects, Raymond worked the room. Not with grief, with handshakes. I watched him approach Daddy's old friend, Mr. Eugene, a retired contractor who owned property all over the west side. Raymond shook his hand, leaned in close, and I read his lips from across the room. Beautiful properties over in West End, markets moving fast out there. He was talking real estate. At my father's funeral, while my daddy's body lay in an open casket 15 feet away. Tamara saw it too. She grabbed my hand under the table at the repast and squeezed.
You see what I see?
I nodded, but I couldn't speak. My throat had closed. Then came the moment that still burns behind my eyelids every time I close my eyes. I stood at the front of the chapel to read the eulogy. My hands were trembling, but I'd practiced the words so many times they lived inside me. I started speaking. I talked about Daddy's hands, how they were always rough from work, but gentle when they held mine. I talked about Sunday mornings on his porch. I talked about the way he made the world feel safe just by being in it. And then mid-sentence, I looked up. In the back row, Raymond had his head tilted toward a woman sitting beside him. She had long braids, a fitted black dress, and she was leaning into him the way you lean into someone you know well, someone you're comfortable with. She whispered something and Raymond smiled. Not his polite smile. The other kind. I lost my place. The words on the paper swam. I gripped the podium to keep my knees from giving out and somehow finished the eulogy. I don't remember what I said for the last 2 paragraphs. My mouth was moving, but my mind was screaming. After the service, I found Raymond at the repast fixing himself a plate like nothing had happened. I pulled him into the hallway. Who was that woman sitting next to you during my eulogy?
What woman?
He didn't even look up from his plate. The woman in the black dress, braids, back row. You were laughing with her while I was reading my father's eulogy, Raymond. He finally looked at me. His eyes were flat, annoyed. Like I was a client asking too many questions about a property he'd already sold.
That's Simone. She's a colleague from the office. She came to pay her respects. Don't make this into something it's not, Denise. Your father just died and you're acting paranoid.
There it was. The first gaslighting, making my pain sound like my problem. But I wasn't done. She was whispering in your ear. Raymond set down his plate. He stepped closer. His voice dropped low the way it always did when he wanted to sound dangerous without raising his voice.
You know what your problem is? You'd be nothing without my last name, and instead of being grateful, you're standing here embarrassing me at your own father's funeral.
The air left my lungs. Every molecule of oxygen in that hallway vanished. I felt my face go hot and my fingers go cold at the same time. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Raymond picked up his plate again and walked back into the reception hall. I stood in that hallway alone, staring at the carpet, and I felt something inside me die. Not all at once, but a piece of it. A piece that had been holding on to the belief that my husband loved me. That night, after Zora was asleep, I did something I had never done in 12 years of marriage. I picked up Raymond's phone while he was in the shower. His passcode was Zora's birthday. He never thought I'd check. I opened his messages, and there it was, a thread with the name Simone W. Hundreds of messages going back 8 months. I scrolled to the most recent ones, and my stomach dropped through the floor.
Can't wait for this to be over so we can finally be together for real. Your wife's daddy dying is the best thing that could have happened to us. Now you can get what you deserve, baby.
From Simone sent the morning of the funeral.
Facts. Once the will gets sorted, I'm set. Just got to keep playing the game a little longer.
Playing the game. That's what my marriage was to him. That's what comforting me when I cried was. That's what holding my hand in church was. A game. A long, calculated game, and I was the only one who didn't know the rules. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. I walked into the bathroom, turned on the faucet, pressed a towel against my face, and screamed into it until my throat burned. Then I washed my face, came out, and got into bed next to the man who had just called our entire marriage a game. He rolled over, put his arm around me, and mumbled, "Good night, babe." I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. The next morning, attorney Harold Benson called. His voice was formal but kind. "Mrs. Carter, your father left specific instructions regarding the reading of his will. I need you and your husband to be present. But I should warn you, not everyone in that room is going to like what they hear." My hand gripped the phone. "What do you mean?" "Your father was a very thorough man, Mrs. Carter. He prepared for everything, including this." He gave me the date. 3 days from now. Raymond overheard the call from the kitchen doorway. And just like that, the man who hadn't asked me a single caring question in weeks suddenly appeared at my side with coffee, a kiss on the forehead, and the warmest smile he'd given me in months.
"Everything okay, babe? Anything I can do?"
I looked at that smile, that beautiful lying smile, and for the first time I saw it for what it was, a costume, just like Tamara said. The 3 days between that phone call and the reading of the will were the longest of my life. And during those 3 days, Raymond put on the greatest performance I had ever seen. He cooked dinner. Raymond Carter, who hadn't boiled water in 2 years, suddenly appeared in the kitchen making lemon pepper chicken and garlic mashed potatoes. He brought me flowers, yellow tulips, my favorite. He played with Zora in the living room, getting down on the floor and letting her paint his fingernails bright pink while he pretended to be a princess. He held me at night, rubbing my back, whispering,
I'm here for you, babe. Whatever you need.
It was perfect. Every gesture, every word, every touch, perfect. And I hated every second of it. Because now I knew. I had read the messages. I had seen the truth typed out in black and white on a glowing screen. Every time he touched me, I felt his fingers calculating. Every time he smiled, I saw the lie behind his teeth. Every time he said, I love you, I heard what he really meant. I love what your dead father might leave me. But I said nothing. I smiled. I thanked him for the flowers. I ate the chicken. I let him hold me. Because I didn't know what to do yet. I was drowning and pretending I could breathe. On the second day, I came home from work early and found something that made the drowning worse. Raymond's briefcase was open on the bed. He was in the shower. I could hear the water running. Normally, I would never have looked. But normally was over. I walked to the briefcase and lifted the flap. Inside, tucked between a stack of listing flyers, were photocopies. My father's property tax records. A printout from the Fulton County Assessor's website showing the estimated value of every property linked to Clarence Holloway. The 3 laundromat locations. Daddy's house on Cascade Road. 2 additional rental properties. I didn't even know Daddy owned a duplex in East Point and a small commercial building in College Park. Raymond had done his homework. Probably had been doing it for years. At the bottom of the stack was a yellow legal pad with Raymond's handwriting. He'd made a list, a column of addresses, and next to each one, a dollar amount. At the bottom, circled twice estimated total $3.8 million. He had calculated my dead father's worth to the penny. While I was grieving, while I was falling apart, while I was trusting him to catch me, he was counting the money behind my back. I put everything back exactly the way I found it. My hands were steady. Something strange was happening inside me. The pain was still there, but it was hardening into something else. Something cold. That evening, Raymond sat on the couch watching television. His phone buzzed and he picked it up quickly. Too quickly. He glanced at the screen, smiled, typed something fast, and put it down face first on the cushion. I didn't need to read it. I already knew who it was. But what I didn't know was what I overheard the next morning. I was upstairs getting Zora ready for school when I heard Raymond's voice drifting up from the kitchen. He was on the phone. I stood at the top of the staircase, one hand on Zora's bedroom door, barely breathing.
Don't worry, Mama. Once I get my share from the old man's will, we're set. I'll pay off the house and set you up real nice. Maybe that condo in Savannah you've been wanting.
A pause.
Just make sure that girl doesn't get in the way. You know how emotional she gets. She'll try to keep everything for herself.
She won't. She doesn't have it in her. She's too soft, too trusting. That's why I married her.
That's why I married her. 5 words. 5 words that rewrote 12 years of my life. He didn't marry me because he loved me. He didn't marry me because of my smile or my laugh or the way I made him feel. He married me because I was easy to fool. My knees buckled. I grabbed the banister and slid down to the top step, pressing my fist against my mouth.
Mama, I can't find my shoes.
Zora called from her room, and I had to force myself to stand, force myself to walk, force myself to be a mother when every cell in my body wanted to collapse. After I dropped Zora at school, I sat in the car in the parking lot for 20 minutes and cried until my chest ached. Then I called Tamara.
Denise, what's wrong?
She answered on the second ring. I told her everything. The messages from Simone, the photocopies in the briefcase, the phone call with Mama Lucille. The words, that's why I married her. By the time I finished, the line was so quiet I thought the call had dropped.
Denise, listen to me. That man has been running a long game on you, and right now he thinks he's about to cash in. You need to be smarter than him. You need to stop crying and start thinking.
I don't know how, I whispered.
Yes, you do. You're an accountant. You find fraud for a living, so treat him like a fraudulent account. Pull the records, follow the money, and do not let him see you coming.
She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing and doing are 2 different countries, and I didn't have a passport yet. That night, Raymond threatened me for the first time. We were in the kitchen. Zora was in bed. I don't even remember how the argument started, something about me spending too much time away from home. But it escalated fast. I said something about maybe we needed space. Maybe I needed to think about things. His face changed. That smooth, charming mask cracked open and something ugly crawled out.
Think about what leaving is, that what you're saying.
He stepped closer, his jaw tight, his eyes narrow.
Go ahead, Denise. Leave. See what happens. Who's going to want a woman with a kid and no personality? You think you're special? You think any man out there is waiting for you?
The words hit me like fists. Each one landed in a different place. My chest, my stomach, the soft spot behind my eyes where the tears come from.
I gave you everything. The house, the lifestyle, the name. Without me, you're nobody. You're just Clarence Holloway's daughter with a calculator and a sad story.
Clarence Holloway's daughter. He said my father's name like it tasted bad, like it was something to spit out. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I walked out of the kitchen, went into the bathroom, and locked the door. I sat on the edge of the tub and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were red. My face was swollen. I looked like a woman who had been beaten and he hadn't even touched me. That's the thing about men like Raymond. They don't need fists. They use words. And words leave bruises you can't cover with makeup. The next morning was the reading of the will. I woke up at 5:30 before the sun, before Raymond, before Zora. I stood at the bathroom mirror and looked at myself for a long time. Something was different. Something behind my eyes. Something I couldn't name yet, but could feel pressing forward, pushing through the grief and the pain and the exhaustion. Raymond came downstairs at 8 wearing his best suit. Navy blue. Italian leather shoes. Fresh haircut. He looked like a man going to collect a prize. He even winked at me over his coffee.
Big day, babe. Let's see what your daddy left us.
Wes. Like he had earned a share of my father's life by sleeping in my bed and lying to my face. I grabbed my purse. We drove to the lawyer's office in silence. And as we pulled into the parking lot, I saw a car I didn't recognize, a white BMW, and leaning against it, checking her phone, was Simone Wells. She was here, at the reading of my father's will. I looked at Raymond. He didn't flinch, didn't even glance her way, but his jaw tightened just enough for me to notice. He knew she was coming. He had invited her. And in that moment, walking into that building on legs that felt like water, I made myself a silent promise. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But I was going to make every single one of them pay for what they'd done to me and to my daddy's memory. Every single one. Attorney Harold Benson's office was on the 3rd floor of a red brick building on Peachtree Street. The waiting room smelled like leather and old paper. There was a grandfather clock in the corner ticking so loud I could feel each second in my teeth. The room was arranged with 8 chairs around a long mahogany table. I sat on one side. Raymond sat next to me close enough that his knee touched mine. A performance for whoever was watching. Mama Lucille sat on his other side wearing a cream-colored blouse and a gold cross necklace, looking like she was attending a church brunch instead of the reading of a dead man's will. She'd driven up from Savannah that morning, which told me everything. Mama Lucille didn't drive 3.5 hours for sentimentality. She drove for money. On the other side of the table sat 2 of Daddy's oldest friends, Mr. Eugene Tate, the retired contractor, and Miss Beverly Daniels, who had worked the front desk at Daddy's first laundromat for 22 years. They sat quietly, hands folded, eyes soft with real grief. The kind Raymond wouldn't recognize if it sat on his face. Simone was not in the room, but I had seen her outside, waiting, like a getaway driver. Harold Benson walked in carrying a thick manila folder and a sealed white envelope. He was a tall man in his 60s, dark-skinned, silver at the temples, with the kind of calm that only comes from decades of delivering life-changing news to people across a table. He nodded at everyone sat down, opened the folder, and put on his reading glasses. "Thank you all for being here. I will now read the last will and testament of Clarence Eugene Holloway, executed on November 15th, 2023, and witnessed by myself and Mr. Eugene Tate. November 15th. That was 5 months before Daddy died. 5 months before the cancer took him. He had written this will while he still had the strength to think clearly, to plan, to protect. Harold began reading. The opening was standard. Debts to be settled. Funeral expenses covered. A small donation to Greater Hope Baptist. Then Harold turned the page and the room shifted. To my daughter, Denise Elaine Carter, born Holloway, I leave the entirety of my estate. This includes the following properties: 3 commercial laundromat locations on Martin Luther King Jr., Drive Jonesboro Road and Campbellton Road, my primary residence at 4712, Cascade Road Southwest, a duplex rental property at 221 East Point Street, a commercial building at 915 Main Street College Park. Additionally, my investment accounts held at Schwab and Vanguard totaling approximately $860,000 in combined value. Raymond straightened in his chair. I felt his body tense beside me like a dog that just caught a scent. Mama Lucille's hand moved to her chest, fingers pressing against her gold cross. Harold continued. The total estimated value of the estate, inclusive of all real property business assets and financial accounts, is approximately $3,800,000. A small sound escaped Mama Lucille's mouth. Not a gasp, more like a hum. The hum of a woman doing math in her head and liking the number. Raymond's knee pressed harder against mine. His hand found my thigh under the table and squeezed. The gesture was supposed to look like comfort. It felt like ownership. Then Harold paused. He removed his reading glasses, cleaned them slowly with a cloth from his breast pocket, and put them back on. That pause, deliberate, measured, told me something else was coming. Mr. Holloway included an additional provision that I will now read in full. He opened the sealed white envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten. Daddy's handwriting. I recognized it immediately, the careful block letters he used for everything from grocery lists to birthday cards. Harold read aloud.
To my baby girl, Denise. If you're hearing this, then I am gone, and I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer. But I need you to know something. I have watched the man you married for 12 years. I saw what you refused to see. I saw how he looked at my properties more than he looked at you. I saw how he asked about my money more than he asked about my health. I saw the way his eyes moved when I talked about my business, not like a son-in-law listening, but like a buyer circling a property he intended to take.
My throat closed. Tears ran down my face before I could stop them. Daddy's voice, I could hear it in every word. His quiet, steady, certain voice. Harold continued reading.
So I did what I have always done. I protected my daughter. All properties and financial assets listed above have been placed in the Holloway Family Trust, established on October 3, 2023. Denise Elaine Carter is the sole trustee and sole beneficiary. So these assets are classified as separate property under Georgia law. They are not marital property. They cannot be divided, claimed, or contested by any spouse, current or future. I made sure of that. My lawyer made sure of that. And the state of Georgia will make sure of that.
The room went silent. The grandfather clock ticked. Once, twice, 3 times. Then Raymond erupted.
This is ridiculous.
He shoved his chair back so hard it scraped the hardwood floor.
I'm her husband. I have legal rights. You can't just lock me out of...
Mr. Carter. Harold's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. This trust is legally airtight. It was reviewed by 2 independent attorneys and filed with the Fulton County Probate Court. You have no claim to any asset listed in this document. None. Raymond's face went from red to white in the space of 2 seconds. He looked at me like I'd pulled the rug out from under him.
Did you know about this?
I shook my head. Because I didn't. Daddy never told me. He just did it. Quietly. The way he did everything.
This is a setup.
Mama Lucille stood up her chair, wobbling behind her.
That old man planned this from the grave. He had no right to...
Ma'am. Harold looked at her over his glasses. Mr. Holloway had every right to distribute his assets however he chose. I'd recommend you sit down. She didn't sit down. She turned to me, eyes burning, and hissed.
Your daddy always thought he was better than us. A man who spent his whole life washing other people's dirty clothes, acting like he was somebody.
The words hit me like a slap. My father's body had been in the ground for less than a week, and this woman was insulting him to my face. In front of his friends. In front of the man who'd known him for 40 years. Mr. Eugene rose slowly from his chair. His voice was low and heavy as stone. "Lucille, you are speaking about a man who built more in his life than most people dream of. You will not disrespect Clarence Holloway in this room. Not today." Mama Lucille opened her mouth. Then she closed it. She sat back down. Raymond paced behind his chair. I could see the sweat forming on his temples. His perfect plan, the one he'd been calculating since the day he shook my hand at that charity gala, was crumbling in real time. Then Harold said, "There is one more matter." He reached into the folder and pulled out a second envelope, smaller, marked with Daddy's handwriting, for Denise Private. "Your father asked that I give this to you separately. He also asked that I inform you that the trust contains additional documentation regarding your husband's financial activities over the past 3 years. He hired a private investigator before his diagnosis. The findings are in the trust file." Raymond stopped pacing. His face went gray.
What financial activities?
He whispered. Harold didn't answer him. He looked at me. "Mrs. Carter, I recommend we schedule a private meeting to review those documents." I nodded. My hands were trembling, but something inside me was burning. Not with pain this time, with clarity. As everyone filed out of the room, I heard Raymond's voice in the hallway. Low, hissing. He didn't know I had stopped just around the corner.
Your daddy's money is the only interesting thing about you.
He was talking to someone on his phone. Simone.
Don't worry, baby. Trust or no trust, I'll fight this. Georgia is a marital property state. She doesn't know that. I'll get what I'm owed.
I pressed my back against the wall. My heart was slamming in my chest, but my mind was quiet, crystal clear. He thought he knew the law better than a trust attorney and a senior accountant. He was wrong, and I was going to show him exactly how wrong. That night, after the reading of the will, Raymond came home and did something I didn't expect. He got angry. Not loud angry, cold angry. The dangerous kind. Zora was at Tamara's house for a sleepover. It was just us. Raymond sat at the kitchen table, Ty loosened whiskey in his hand, staring at me like I was a problem he needed to solve.
Your father did this on purpose. He set this whole thing up to cut me out.
I stood at the counter, arms crossed. He set it up to protect me.
Protect you from what? From your own husband.
He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just acid.
That old man never liked me. From day one, he looked at me like I wasn't good enough.
Maybe he saw something I didn't. Raymond's glass hit the table hard. Whiskey sloshed over the rim.
Watch your mouth, Denise.
Silence. The refrigerator hummed. The kitchen faucet dripped. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Then he leaned forward, elbows on the table, and his voice dropped to that low, controlled tone that always made my skin crawl.
You think that trust is going to hold. You think I'm just going to walk away from what's mine. I've already talked to a lawyer. I'll challenge that trust in court. I'll have them question your father's mental state when he wrote it. Chemo brain, medication, diminished capacity.
My blood turned to ice. He was going to drag my dying father's name through court. He was going to stand in front of a judge and argue that the man who built an empire from a laundromat was too sick in the head to know what he was doing.
I'll prove he was senile, Denise. And when I do, that trust falls apart and half of everything becomes mine.
Something inside me snapped. Not broke. Snapped. Like a rubber band pulled past its limit. Not into pieces, into something tighter, sharper, more focused. I looked at Raymond and I didn't see my husband anymore. I saw a man who had married me for money, lied to me for 12 years, cheated on me with a woman who celebrated my father's death, and was now threatening to desecrate my daddy's memory in open court. Something inside me went quiet. Not sad quiet, dangerous quiet. "Do what you have to do, Raymond," I said. My voice was steady, flat. A voice I didn't recognize. "And I'll do what I have to do." He blinked. For half a second, something flickered across his face. Not guilt, fear. Just a flash gone as quick as it came. Then the mask went back on.
You don't scare me, Denise.
I picked up my keys and my purse. I wasn't trying to. I drove to Tamara's apartment. It was after 10 at night. She opened the door in her bathrobe, took one look at my face, and said,
"Sit down, talk."
I told her everything. The trust. Raymond's threat to challenge it. The way he talked about Daddy like he was just an obstacle to clear. By the time I finished, Tamara was pacing her living room with her arms folded tight across her chest.
He wants to call your father senile, the man who built a $3.8 million estate from scratch. While Raymond can't even close a deal without borrowing from your joint account,
She stopped pacing.
Denise, you need a lawyer, not just any lawyer, a killer.
Harold Benson said there's more. Daddy hired a private investigator before he died. There are documents in the trust file about Raymond's financial activities.
Your daddy hired a PI.
Tamara's eyes widened. He never told me. She sat down next to me and grabbed both my hands.
Denise, your father handed you a loaded weapon from the grave. You need to use it, but you need the right person to pull the trigger.
The next morning, Tamara called me with a name. Michelle Okafor, divorce attorney, office in Midtown. She had a reputation that preceded her like thunder before a storm.
She doesn't lose, and she doesn't play nice.
I called Michelle's office at 9:15. By 11:30, I was sitting across from her in a sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Piedmont Park. She listened to my entire story without interrupting. When I finished, she removed her glasses, set them on the desk, and said one sentence.
Your father was a genius.
Then she opened the trust file Harold had given me. Inside were the private investigator's findings. 26 pages. Photos. Bank records. Transaction logs. What they revealed made the room tilt sideways. Raymond had opened a joint checking account with Simone Wells 14 months ago at a bank across town. Over the past 2 years, he had transferred $67,000 from our joint savings into that account, small amounts spread out designed to avoid detection. 300 here, 500 there, 1,000 on months when my paycheck was larger. But that wasn't the worst part. The investigator had also uncovered a loan application. Raymond had applied for a home equity line of credit using our house as collateral, the house on Kirkwood Avenue, the house I thought we owned together. He had signed my name on the application. My signature, forged.
This signature is not yours.
Michelle pointed to the document. No.
You never authorized this loan?
I didn't even know it existed.
Mrs. Carter, your husband didn't just cheat on you. He committed fraud. Forging a spouse's signature on a loan document is a felony in Georgia. This isn't just a divorce case anymore. This is criminal.
I stared at the forged signature. It looked almost like mine. Almost. But the loop on the D was wrong. Daddy taught me to write my name with a wide loop. Raymond never noticed that detail. The accountant in me saw it immediately.
Here's what we're going to do. We file for divorce and criminal fraud simultaneously, but we don't tip our hand. Not yet. We let Raymond think he's winning. We let him file his challenge to the trust. We let him walk into that courtroom feeling like the smartest man in the room. And then we open this file in front of the judge, in front of his lawyer, in front of anyone who's watching.
How long?
4 to 6 weeks for the hearing. Can you hold it together that long? Can you go home and look at that man and pretend everything is normal and you're...
I thought about Daddy, about the way he spent years quietly building a fortune while everyone thought he was just a man who washed clothes. About the way he never raised his voice, never bragged, never let anyone see what he was really doing. Real wealth is quiet. I can hold it together, I said.
Your father didn't just protect your money, Mrs. Carter. He built you a fortress. Now let's use it.
I drove home that afternoon with the windows down. The April air was warm and smelled like dogwood blossoms. I pulled into the driveway, turned off the engine, and sat there for a moment. Raymond's car was in the garage. Inside that house was a man who had lied to me, stolen from me, betrayed me, and was now planning to destroy my dead father's reputation. I smiled. For the first time in weeks, I actually smiled, because he had no idea what was coming. The next 4 weeks were the longest performance of my life. Every morning I woke up next to Raymond, made coffee, packed Zora's lunch, and smiled. I smiled when he kissed my cheek. I smiled when he told me about his day. I smiled when he said, "Love you, babe," on his way out the door, knowing he was driving straight to Simone's apartment in Midtown. I smiled because Michelle told me to.
Don't change a thing. The moment he senses something is off, he'll start hiding evidence. Let him feel safe. Let him feel like he's already won.
So I let him win. Every single day I let him win. Raymond's confidence grew like a weed. He had hired his own attorney, a man named Greg Dawson, who specialized in contesting trusts and estate disputes. I knew this because Raymond left Dawson's business card on the kitchen counter like a trophy. He wanted me to see it. He wanted me to be scared.
My lawyer says we have a strong case, diminished capacity. Your father was on heavy medication during chemo. That trust won't hold up.
Raymond told me one evening while I was washing dishes. He was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching me with that satisfied smile. I kept my eyes on the plate in my hands. If you say so, Raymond.
I do say so. And when it falls apart, we split everything 50-50. That's the law.
I rinsed the plate, set it in the rack, didn't look up. Okay. He walked over and put his hands on my shoulders from behind. His touch made my skin crawl, but I didn't flinch.
See, this doesn't have to be ugly, Denise. Just cooperate and we'll get through this.
Cooperate? He wanted me to cooperate with my own robbery. Meanwhile, behind his back, Michelle and I were building a case so airtight it could hold water in a hurricane. We met twice a week at her office, always during my lunch hour, so Raymond wouldn't notice a change in my schedule. Michelle had subpoenaed the bank records for Raymond's secret account with Simone. The transfers were even worse than the investigator's initial report. $67,000 was the conservative number. When Michelle's forensic accountant dug deeper, the real total was $83,000 over 26 months. Raymond had been bleeding our joint savings dry, and I never noticed because he always made the transfers on the same days my direct deposit hit, burying his withdrawals under the noise of incoming money. The accountant in me was furious. Not just at Raymond, at myself. I audited corporations for a living. I found hidden transactions in financial statements with thousands of line items. But I never once looked at my own bank account with the same eyes. Because I trusted him. Because love made me lazy with the one ledger that mattered most. Michelle also confirmed the forged loan. Raymond had applied for a $75,000 home equity line using our house on Kirkwood Avenue. But here was the detail that made Michelle laugh out loud when she discovered it. The house was never ours to begin with. It was purchased through the Holloway Family Trust 2 years before Daddy died. Daddy had bought it quietly, titled it in the trust, and let us live in it. Raymond never checked the deed. He just assumed his name was on it because he lived there.
Your husband borrowed $75,000 against a house he doesn't own using a signature he forged.
Michelle said, shaking her head.
This man isn't just a liar, Mrs. Carter. He's a bad liar.
We also discovered something else. Something that made the ground shift under my feet. Michelle's investigator had pulled Raymond's financial records going back to before our marriage. And buried in a bank statement from 2010, a full year before we met at that charity gala, was a wire transfer. $500, sent to a man named Terrence Mitchell. The name meant nothing to me at first. Then Michelle showed me Terrence Mitchell's LinkedIn profile. He was a financial consultant who had worked briefly at Daddy's accounting firm, the same firm that handled the books for the laundromats.
Your husband paid $500 to a man who had access to your father's financial records.
Michelle said slowly.
1 year before he conveniently showed up at a charity gala where your father was a known donor.
The room went cold. My fingertips went numb. Raymond didn't meet me by accident. He didn't walk up to me at that gala because I was the only woman in the room. He walked up to me because he already knew who my father was. He already knew about the laundromats, the properties, the quiet wealth that Clarence Holloway had built behind a modest life. Our entire relationship, every date, every kiss, every whispered, "I love you," every Sunday morning making pancakes with Zora was built on a lie. A calculated, premeditated lie that started before I even knew his name. I sat in Michelle's office and cried. Not the loud heaving kind, the silent kind. The kind where tears just fall and you don't bother wiping them because what's the point? 12 years. 12 years of my life given to a man who had targeted me like a mark. Michelle let me cry. She didn't rush me. When I finally looked up, she handed me a tissue and said,
Now you know everything, and now we use everything. Are you ready?
I wiped my face, blew my nose, looked her in the eye. File it. Michelle filed for divorce and submitted the criminal fraud complaint to the Fulton County District Attorney on the same day. But the court hearing was scheduled first 4 weeks out. Raymond received the divorce papers on a Tuesday morning. I was at work when Tamara texted me.
He just called me screaming. Guess he got the papers.
When I came home that evening, Raymond was standing in the living room, divorce papers crumpled in his fist. His face was red. His neck veins bulged.
You're divorcing me.
He threw the papers on the coffee table.
After everything I've done for this family.
I set my purse down. Calm. Steady. Yes.
Fine.
He straightened his tie. That mask again fury smoothing into arrogance like ironing a wrinkled shirt.
Fine, Denise. You want a war? I'll give you a war. I'll take you to the cleaners. I built this life. You just lived in it.
I said nothing. I walked past him into the kitchen and started making Zora's dinner. He stood in the doorway watching me, waiting for a reaction. I gave him nothing. Later that night, I heard him on the phone in the garage. Simone's voice on speaker, breathy and excited.
Baby, don't worry. Once the judge sees how long you've been the provider, you'll get half of everything, including that trust.
Raymond laughed. By the time my lawyer's done, she'll be lucky to keep the clothes on her back.
I stood in the hallway listening, and I thought about Daddy, about his quiet hands and his quiet money and his quiet plan that had been waiting in an envelope for this exact moment. I smiled at the darkness, and I whispered to no one, 4 more weeks, Daddy, just 4 more weeks. The Fulton County Courthouse smelled like floor wax and old wood. It was a Wednesday morning, 9:15, and the hallway outside courtroom B was full of people waiting for their lives to be rearranged by a stranger in a black robe. I wore a black blazer, white blouse, simple gold earrings that Daddy gave me for my 30th birthday. No makeup except a little concealer under my eyes.
Michelle had told me, "Look like exactly who you are, a working mother who's been through hell and is still standing."
Raymond arrived in a charcoal suit, Italian shoes, fresh haircut. He looked like he was walking into a business negotiation he expected to win. His lawyer, Greg Dawson, was beside him carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my car payment. Behind them, Mama Lucille in a navy dress and Pearl's chin-up eyes hard as concrete. And behind Mama Lucille, sitting in the second row of the gallery, Simone Wells. Black dress, gold bracelet, legs crossed. She looked at me the way you look at someone whose seat you're about to take. The judge was the Honorable Sandra P. Mitchell, early 60s, dark-skinned, reading glasses. She had the kind of face that said, "I have heard every lie invented, so don't waste my time." Greg Dawson went first. He was confident, polished. He argued that Raymond had been the primary income earner for the majority of the marriage, that the Holloway Family Trust should be reclassified as marital property due to Raymond's contributions to the household, that Clarence Holloway's mental state during chemotherapy made the trust legally questionable. Then Raymond stood up. Michelle had predicted this narcissists can't let their lawyers do all the talking.
Your Honor,
He said, straightening his jacket.
I built this life. I provided for this family for 12 years. I put a roof over my wife's head, food on the table, and gave my daughter everything she needed. My wife's father, may he rest in peace, was a good man, but he ran laundromats, small business. I'm the one who brought financial stability to this family.
He paused, looked at me.
Without me, she'd still be counting pennies in a cubicle.
Simone nodded from the gallery. Mama Lucille folded her hands in her lap with a thin, satisfied smile. This was his peak, his mountain, his moment of absolute certainty. Michelle let the silence breathe for 3 full seconds. Then she stood up.
Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence regarding the true financial structure of this marriage.
She opened her folder, calm, methodical, like a surgeon picking up a scalpel. First document, the Holloway Family Trust. Michelle walked the judge through every clause, every property, every dollar. Separate property, sole beneficiary, irrevocable. She presented the opinion letters from 2 independent attorneys confirming the trust's validity. She presented Clarence Holloway's medical records showing he was lucid and competent at the time of signing, verified by his oncologist.
Mr. Holloway was dying. Michelle said, But he was not confused. He was the most deliberate man in this case.
Second document. Bank records. Michelle laid out the $83,000 Raymond had transferred to a joint account with Simone Wells. Every transaction. Every date. Every amount. 26 months of theft disguised as small withdrawals. Raymond's legs started bouncing under the table. Third document. The forged loan application. Michelle presented the $75,000 home equity line Raymond had taken out using a forged signature. She placed my real signature beside the forged one on a projector screen. The difference was clear the loop on the D, my daddy's loop.
Mrs. Carter never authorized this loan. This signature is a forgery, and the house used as collateral belongs to the Holloway Family Trust. Mr. Carter borrowed against a property he has no legal claim to.
Raymond's face went white. Not pale. White. Like someone had reached inside him and pulled the plug on his blood supply. His hands started trembling. He grabbed his water glass and it slipped tipping over, sending water across the table. Dawson scrambled for napkins. Judge Mitchell looked at Raymond over her glasses. "Mr. Carter, is this your signature on the loan application?" Raymond's mouth opened. Nothing came out. His voice had cracked before he even spoke.
Your Honor, I can explain.
A yes or no will suffice.
Yes, but...
Then Michelle delivered the final blow.
Your Honor, one more exhibit.
She placed the wire transfer on the screen. $500 from Raymond Carter to Terrence Mitchell, dated March 2010.
Terrence Mitchell was a financial consultant with access to Clarence Holloway's business records. Mr. Carter paid this man for information about the Holloway family's assets before he ever introduced himself to his future wife. This marriage was not a love story, Your Honor. It was a business acquisition.
The courtroom went dead silent. Raymond's entire body was shaking now. Sweat beaded on his forehead and rolled down his temple. His jaw clenched and unclenched like he was chewing on something that wouldn't go down. Dawson leaned over and whispered frantically, but Raymond wasn't listening. He was staring at the screen like a man watching his own house burn. I looked at Simone. She was already standing. Quietly, without a word, she picked up her purse, smoothed her dress, and walked out of the courtroom. She didn't look at Raymond. She didn't look at anyone. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Mama Lucille let out a strangled sob. Not for her son. For the money she'd just watched evaporate. Judge Mitchell removed her glasses. "Mr. Carter, you told this court that you built this life. But every document in front of me says the opposite. The house you live in belongs to your wife's trust. The savings you spent belong to your joint account. And the marriage you claim to have built was initiated through financial espionage." She paused. "I am granting the divorce. Full custody of the minor child to Mrs. Carter. Mr. Carter will have supervised visitation. The Holloway Family Trust remains intact. Mr. Carter is ordered to repay $83,000 in misappropriated funds, and I am referring the forged loan application to the district attorney for criminal investigation." Raymond broke.
Denise.
His voice cracked open like dry wood.
Please, I'm sorry. Think about Zora. Think about our family. I made mistakes, but I can change. I swear I can change.
I looked at this man. This man I had slept beside for 12 years. This man who had kissed me goodnight while planning to rob me blind. This man who called my father a man who washed other people's dirty clothes. I stood up slowly, smoothed my blazer, and I said in a voice so calm it scared even me, "You said I'd be nothing without your last name. Look around this courtroom, Raymond. I have everything. My father's legacy, my daughter, my freedom. And you," I glanced at the empty seat where Simone had been. "You don't even have her." I turned to the judge. "Thank you, Your Honor." Then I walked out of that courtroom. I didn't look back. Not once. My heels clicked on the marble floor steady, and even the only sound in a hallway that felt like it was holding its breath. Tamara was waiting outside on the courthouse steps, standing in the April sunshine with her arms open. I walked into them and held on tight.
Your daddy's watching, girl, and he is smiling.
3 months later, on a Saturday morning in July, I woke up in my father's house on Cascade Road, the house I grew up in, the house where Daddy taught me to ride a bike in the driveway and braided my hair on the front porch before school, the house that now belonged to me. I had spent the first month after the divorce gutting the place, not because it was old or broken, because I needed to make it mine. I painted the living room a warm honey gold. I refinished the hardwood floors that Daddy had installed himself 30 years ago. I turned his old office into a reading room for Zora with bookshelves that ran floor to ceiling and a big window seat where she could curl up with a blanket and disappear into a story. Zora's room was her favorite. She picked the color herself, lavender with white trim. I let her put glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling.
Mama, you think Grandpa can see these from heaven?
At night when I tucked her in, she'd look up at those stars and ask, "I think he can, baby. I think he put the real ones up there just for you." She was doing well. Better than I expected. Kids are resilient in ways adults forget to be. She missed her father, and I never spoke badly about Raymond in front of her. That wasn't my burden to place on a 9-year-old's shoulders. She saw him every other Saturday supervised at a family center in Decatur. She came home quiet after those visits, but not broken. She was processing it in her own time, in her own way. I was too. Work had become my anchor. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, my firm offered me a promotion director of forensic accounting. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent 12 years failing to audit my own marriage, and now they wanted me to lead a team that uncovered fraud for a living. I took the job. I was good at it. Turns out, when you've lived through deception at that level, you develop a sixth sense for the smell of it in a balance sheet. Tamara and I grew closer than ever. Every Wednesday evening, she'd come over after Zora was asleep, and we'd sit on the front porch with a glass of wine and talk about everything and nothing. She never said, "I told you so." Not once. She just showed up, over and over again. That's what real love looks like. Not grand gestures, just someone who keeps showing up. One evening, sitting on that porch, I told her about an idea I'd been turning over in my mind. A scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing accounting or finance degrees, named after Daddy, the Clarence Holloway Foundation.
Denise, that is exactly what your father would have wanted.
Tamara set her glass down. We filed the paperwork the following week. The first 2 scholarships were awarded in September 1 to a 26-year-old mother of twins in East Point and one to a 31-year-old woman in College Park who had been working 2 jobs while taking night classes. When I handed them those award letters, they both cried. And I thought about Daddy standing in his laundromat in his flannel shirt feeding quarters into machines, quietly building something that would outlive him by generations. As for Raymond, the aftermath was everything Michelle predicted and worse. The district attorney charged him with forgery and fraud in August. He pleaded no contest, hoping for leniency. The judge gave him 18 months probation, 200 hours of community service, and a restitution order for the full $83,000. His real estate license was suspended pending review by the Georgia Real Estate Commission. Greg Dawson dropped him as a client after the hearing, and Raymond couldn't afford another attorney. Simone vanished. Not dramatically. She just stopped existing in Raymond's life like she was never there. No calls, no texts, no forwarding address. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she had moved to Charlotte and was already seen with a new man, older, married, wealthy. The pattern continued. Raymond was never special to her. He was just a wallet she outgrew. Mama Lucille sold her house in Savannah 3 months after the trial. She couldn't afford the mortgage without Raymond's help, and Raymond couldn't help himself anymore, let alone his mother. Last I heard, she moved into a 1-bedroom apartment near her sister in Macon. She never called me, never apologized. I didn't expect her to. Some people carry their bitterness like luggage they refuse to set down even when it's crushing them. Raymond himself ended up in a studio apartment off Buford Highway. No car, he'd leased a BMW that got repossessed when the payment stopped. No girlfriend, no career, no family dinners. Just a man sitting in a small room with the echo of everything he threw away. I don't hate him. I want to be clear about that. Hate is heavy, and I've put down every heavy thing I was carrying. But I don't forgive him either. Forgiveness isn't something I owe him. It's something I'll give myself when I'm ready on my own time, in my own way. One Sunday afternoon, I drove to Daddy's grave at Westview Cemetery. I brought yellow tulips, his favorite, though he never told anyone. I just knew because every spring he'd stop the truck when he saw them growing wild on the side of the road and smile like they were old friends. I sat on the grass beside his headstone and talked to him. "You saved me, Daddy. Even when you were gone, you saved me. You saw what I couldn't see. You planned what I was too scared to plan. You loved me enough to protect me from the thing I loved most." The wind moved through the oak trees above me, warm, gentle, like a hand on my shoulder. "I'm okay now, Daddy. Zora's okay. We're in your house. We're safe." That evening, I was unpacking a box from Daddy's closet, old photo albums, tax returns, his reading glasses, when I found a small sealed envelope at the bottom. On the front, in Daddy's block handwriting, it said, "For my Zora." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper.
To my grandbaby Zora, you come from strong women. Your grandmother was strong. Your mama is the strongest woman I have ever known, and you, little girl, are going to be stronger than all of us. The world is going to try to tell you who you are. Don't listen. You tell the world who you are. Love, Grandpa Clarence. Love.
I held that letter to my chest and cried, not from pain, from fullness, from the overwhelming proof that even in death my father was still parenting, still loving, still showing up. I gave Zora the letter that night. She read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it under her pillow.
Mama, Grandpa knew me.
Yes, baby, he knew you better than anyone. My name is Denise Elaine Carter. I am 38 years old. I am my father's daughter. I am a mother. I am a woman who was lied to, stolen from, and underestimated by every person who was supposed to love her. And I am still here, standing, breathing, building. My father always said real wealth is quiet. He was right. The loudest person in the room had nothing. And the quiet woman he tried to break, she had everything. If this story taught me anything, it's this: never let anyone make you believe your worth depends on them. Your value was set long before they showed up, and it doesn't decrease when they leave. If you're going through something similar, know that you are not alone, and you are stronger than the lie they told you about yourself. Drop a comment and tell me your story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong, stay quiet, and stay dangerous.